Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior professional with a deep expertise in marketing and culture from Toronto, Canada, Hilton Barbour. Hilton, welcome to the show.
Ash, always a delight to speak to you, mate, and looking forward to digging into marketing and culture, two of my favorite topics.
Thank you. Hilton, in his own words, is a marketing provocateur and a culture champion. So, Hilton, before we get into marketing and culture, tell me a little bit about your own journey. And you describe marketing as your first love. What sparked this passion?
Okay, so I was born in Zimbabwe a million years ago, as you can probably detect, and growing up on a staple diet of British advertising. So as a young boy, I grew up on British ads through the sort of 80s and early 90s, which just created in me this love of creativity and the ability for marketing to inspire and motivate and capture the hearts of humans. So for me, when I came to Canada, immigrated in my mid-20s, I wanted to be able to do that job. To me, there wasn't a better job in the world than somebody who would be able to create that kind of advertising that I grew up on. And that was where that love began. And I must be honest, I still have a deep nostalgia whenever I see great advertising.
How wonderful. How wonderful. You also talk about the importance of EQ and IQ dexterity. Can you share a moment in your career where emotional intelligence made a big difference?
Well, to be honest, the times where I've seen EQ have its biggest impact is when I've been fortunate enough a couple of times in my career to work with really great leaders, leaders who understood that in order to galvanize and motivate a team, that they had to appeal to your heart, not just your head.
Yeah.
And I've had numerous opportunities where I've worked with incredibly smart individuals across many of the clients that I've worked with over the years. But the truly great ones were the ones that could reach out and make a human connection, the ones that could be able to find something in you to motivate you to work harder, to strive harder, to reach deeper into yourself. And that's where the unique blend of EQ and IQ, to me, often as a recipient, has had the most impact. I worked for an individual early in my career, fortunately, who was able in our worldwide teams to connect individuals from different markets. And he did this with such dexterity, and it was so unobtrusive. You and I would be in a conversation and he would say, Hilton, I know that you're from Zimbabwe and Ash is from India. Tell me why you guys love cricket so much. And he would just beautifully and elegantly be able to weave these kind of personal anecdotes and knowledge into his conversations. And I always admired just how deftly he did it and how quickly he was able to connect to his team. So for me, he was an incredible example of EQ and IQ. I've got to tell you, nobody worked harder for him than the team beneath him.
Wow, what a great example. Thank you. Let's now talk about marketing and culture. And my first question is that you say marketing is the growth engine of any organization. Why do you think some leaders still underplay its role?
Couple of reasons. I think marketing and marketers, we've not done ourselves a great service over the years. We ceaselessly ask for more and more budget and often are unable to connect what we do to the true drivers of the organization. So I still think that in some sectors, there is this disconnect between what is it that marketing does and what is it that the business requires. In fairness, there's also been what I would consider a sad dilution of the actual marketing task. Growing up, as I did with experience in packaged goods, there was a time when marketing did cover the classic 4 Ps
Mm.
and was responsible for all of them:
Yeah.
promotion, product, distribution, placement, all of those things, and pricing.
Mm.
Now, in many sectors, because of technology and how that's created product managers and development people, marketing has become an exercise in communications.
Mm.
And in the spirit of that, that becomes the difficulty when marketing only has the ability to work on promotion
Mhm.
and not the other elements of the product and pricing and placement.
Mhm.
It becomes quite easy for people to say, that's the coloring in department.
Mm.
Those are the people who make those flashy, inexpensive ads.
Okay. Amazing. And what, in your view, is the biggest marketing myth you believe needs to be challenged right now?
Here's what it. So this is going to be you and I could probably do a podcast on this. And so my hesitation is only because I probably have 35 myths
Okay.
bouncing around in my head at the moment.
Yeah.
A couple of simple ones. I think one well-known and an ongoing myth
Mm.
is that there is such a thing as loyalty, that people would consider that they are loyal to a product.
Mm.
Time and again, research has shown that we're not loyal to a single product.
Mm.
We actually have a portfolio of products. And I would imagine if you said to me, Hilton, my favorite brand in the world is Nike, if I had to come to your house and look in your house, I imagine that you would have some Nike products, but you'd also have products from other people. So
Mm.
nobody exclusively buys from
Yeah.
one brand and is loyal. The other thing is this very logical thing that we call a funnel, a sales funnel. You're at the top of the funnel, the
Mm.
middle of the funnel, the
Mm.
bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
Reality is that's not how humans act.
Mm.
It's a wonderful and great thing for us to say, well, Ash has downloaded a PDF of our latest report. He's
Mhm.
at the top of the funnel. Ash has booked a sales call. He's in the middle of the funnel.
Mm.
That's not how these things work. And
Yeah.
again, research has shown time and again
Mm.
that some of these very logical frameworks that we have are just not truth in reality and in the
Mm.
real world.
Mm.
Some of those myths would be ones that I would hope we could put to bed finally.
Well said. Well said. How do you define a distinctive brand in today's noisy and commoditized market?
The same way I would have defined it 20 years ago.
Uh-huh.
One that makes a unique emotional connection to a consumer,
Mm-hmm.
tells tells and creates a compelling reason why that product or service has a legitimate and credible reason to
Mm.
be considered by that consumer to solve a legitimate problem that they have.
Mm.
If marketers can't connect to a challenge or problem that a consumer has, and it could be as simple as, I need fresh breath because I'm going on a date with my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Wrigley's chewing gum.
Mm.
Or I'm incredibly cold and I need a refreshing cup of Nestle coffee.
Mm.
Again, there has to be a compelling consumer state that the
Yeah.
product solves for.
Yeah.
They also have to obviously be known to that consumer.
Mm.
Dear friend of mine said, we were sitting in a conversation once with a group of executives, and the CEO said, why should I increase my marketing budget?
Mm-hmm.
What is the reason for us to do that? And without hesitation, my friend said, because nobody ever bought a brand they'd never heard of.
Mm.
So again, some of these things classically, Ash, and I imagine you know this as well as I,
Yeah.
has to be awareness, there has to be consideration, and
Mm.
heaven forbid, you've also got to solve a legitimate problem that the
Mm.
consumer has.
Mm. Mm. Well said. Great response. You also say question everything. How do you
Mhm.
apply that principle when creating marketing strategies?
Much to the chagrin and annoyance of clients from time to
Oh,
time.
yes.
I think the reality is it can be very easy, and inevitably I'm going to use the word AI. It can be very inevitable to reach a situation where you believe that a prompt into ChatGPT or Perplexity is going to give you the answer to your marketing problem. I think, and I worry, increasingly that is the default stance of clients and agencies and consultants. What is it that AI is going to tell me is the answer to this challenge? Question everything really is about keep your curiosity. Question the data that you've been provided. Not to be obnoxious, not to create problems, but to ask, are we looking at the right data? Are we solving the right problem? Does this answer require just a moment more reflection? And I do worry that we are increasingly at such a desire where speed and velocity means that we've stopped caring about taking a pause, moment's reflection. I think you and I will both attest to the benefit of reading something.
Correct.
And then walking around the block and just letting that ruminate just for a moment.
Yeah.
And then coming back and saying, you know what? I still think that's great.
Correct.
So that is what I mean by question everything. Retain your curiosity.
Correct.
Retain just that little moment that says, is this right? Could this be better? And that I would suggest is at the heart of it.
Well said. You referred to AI a few minutes back, and I have a follow-up question for you on that. How has AI already changed the way marketers think? What excites you when you look at this kind of an evolution in marketing?
I'll be honest, I look at it with a degree of awe and abject terror. The awe part is obvious, I think, to anybody. You know, I had an opportunity 24 hours ago where I was asked a question by a client, which genuinely meant that I would have spent 2 or 3 days doing some research. 2 or 3 hours inside Perplexity, and I had a pretty credible and legitimate answer. Research and sightings and academic background. That was incredible. I won't lie to you. That was incredible. My concern is, and we all know this, AI is an accumulation of all the knowledge that we have ever created and that the LLMs have ever digested.
Absolutely.
It doesn't tell us new things. It doesn't create new. It doesn't create novel. It doesn't create never seen before. That's the human component. And I worry, again, back to speed and velocity and things like that, that we've lost that sense of ingenuity, that sense of imagination, and that it's been great for us to say, well, AI's got the answer. Now, what's the question? That's the part that worries me as marketers, that we will rely on things that have happened before instead of testing. How can we create something new, novel, and different?
Great response. Hilton, now let's move and talk about culture. That's your other passion other than marketing.
Yes.
Hey, culture is the fuel of creativity and agility.
Yes.
What are the signs of a truly aligned company culture?
I would suggest any metric that your organization can throw up is a sign of your organization's culture. The reason I say that is every single day around the world, your people walk into an office, into an organization, and they vote with every decision that they make, whether they are aligned to the culture and the strategy you're trying to get done. Now, consider in your own career, Ash, the decisions that you make and the decisions that you avoid are signs of your culture.
Correct.
Now look at everything that your organization's trying to get done. Launch a new product, increase deployment in a certain market, lower costs.
Yeah.
All of those things are driven by a million decisions made by your people every day. A truly aligned culture is one in which the decisions being made are aligned to the strategy and what the organization's trying to get done. A misaligned culture is where you have conversations that say, why does it take us so long to make a decision? Why has it been that we never get any innovation out of the factory? Why is it that we have such a low customer satisfaction? Why is our client responsiveness so terrible? Respectfully, each and every one of those scenarios is an outcome of your culture.
Amazing. How can leaders avoid the trap of cosmetic culture? Values are declared but not lived. And I've often seen this with startup entrepreneurs or CEOs where they say HR is responsible for culture, but all that doesn't apply to me because I'm the CEO.
Ash, how long is this podcast? You and I are going to do this for 2 or 3 hours.
Well, the amount of
we
experience you and I
could do
have, we
this.
could probably keep talking. I agree.
I mean, in very simple terms, I always will tell executives that your culture is defined by 3 things.
Right.
What you celebrate.
Mhm.
So, for example, we've both seen organizations. There's a wonderful sales quarter. Somebody makes a sale, they ring a bell, or they send an email, or there's a summer party, etc., etc. What do we celebrate? The other one is, what do we promote, and who do we promote? We promote somebody because they cut costs. We promote somebody because they're the best salesperson. We promote somebody because they've got the best relationship with the most important client. These are all legitimate reasons and things that we promote. The third one is what we tolerate. And time and again, and I will suggest over all of the years that I've worked in culture, that is always the hardest question for any executive to answer.
Yeah.
What do we tolerate? And I've written about this extensively for the folks. I'm sure there will be something in the liner notes. Please go to my website and my blog, and you'll see a lot of writing on this topic. But back to your question, things like values make for great posters, t-shirts, coffee mugs, and things like that. But the grandfather of culture, Ed Schein, would say, espoused values, those are the ones that are talked about, are not as important as the lived behaviors.
Correct.
To look to the behaviors and say, are the behaviors aligned? And do the words on the wall happen in the actions and behaviors of the people at all levels? And that you're absolutely right.
Very interesting.
And Ash, maybe like parents, it's very easy to say, do as I say, don't do as I do.
Absolutely. Great response. How can culture become a real competitive advantage and not just a cliche?
Again, one of my favorite questions. Appreciate you asking that. I think, Ash, truthfully, I'm always surprised. We hire wonderful individuals. We spend all this time interviewing them and putting them through a series of tests to then bring them into our organization. And then we micromanage the heck out of them. We don't set them free. We constrain them. Culture is a competitive advantage where the strengths of your humans can actually be deployed to the execution of your strategy. So if you have smart marketing people, why are you constraining them? Why are you micromanaging them? The hardest thing I would say any leader has is to be able to let go and allow for the autonomy of the smart and wonderful people that they've hired. If not, micromanaging, you're choking and constraining the very reasons and very skills that you hired them for in the first place. Isn't that a remarkably poor executive decision?
Yeah.
Would you turn down a piece of equipment to 50% capacity? Why would you do that with your humans?
Yeah. Well said. What role should marketing play in shaping and reinforcing culture?
Marketing's got a critical role to play. Marketing sets an expectation in the marketplace for what the organization should deliver. So I've always considered that marketing is the external manifestation of the culture internally. For example, and again, go back to your favorite brands. The ability for a marketer to say, we're the most responsive technology company in the world. We're the most innovative sports brand in the world. Is only possible if the power of the culture behind that is aligned and working to achieve that and deliver it. This may sound like a bit of a glib comment, but I've often said that marketing writes a check in the marketplace that the culture ends up having to cash because they make a promise to consumers and customers. When you interact with us, this is what you'll get. What you get is derived from what the culture is prepared to give you.
Right.
So if you're not prepared to do that, that's where you get the misalignment. That's where you get the customer frustration, the customer churn and attrition. Because respectfully, they say, you promised me X and delivered Y. So I think one of the most vital parts that marketing plays is ensuring that the checks that they write are cashed by the organization.
Well said. I have time for two more questions for you.
Sure.
How do you help leaders become more empathetic without losing edge or decisiveness?
I'd suggest that it's not an either-or conversation. I think, unfortunately, I wrote about this recently in a slightly different context. Jim Collins, you and I both recognize, the author of Built to Last and Good to Great, wrote about something called the tyranny of awe, that leaders can get into their heads. I need to deliver short-term profits or long-term growth. It's not an or conversation. With respect, I would say leaders who are empathetic, who understand the unique needs of their humans, are more likely to garner the loyalty, respect, affection, commitment, and that's the critical word, commitment of their people. There is nothing wrong. In fact, I would suggest in the world today, there's everything right about trying to understand your humans, particularly at the levels of uncertainty that we're all facing. Uncertainty that creates anxiety, anxiety that creates fear, fear that impedes our decision-making. Think about how important it would be if decision-making is critical to any leader. Understanding the emotions of our people could not be more important at any time in history than right now.
Right. Well said. Hilton, my last question. If you could change one cultural mindset in business, what would it be and why?
These days, that's an easy answer. Humans are still your competitive advantage, not technology. You and I have both been through numerous cycles of technology, the arrival of the internet, digital transformation, and now AI. And every single time that I've worked in all of those, There's been a sense of technology is the answer. I no longer need these illogical, irrational, emotional humans.
Yeah.
Where do you think your best ideas come from? Where do you think your heightened creativity comes from? Where do you think the passion and beating heart of your organization is? It's not in a server farm. It walks into your building every morning. So for me, the worrying trend, and I see it increasingly in North America at the moment, is that AI is considered the answer and team human is considered something that we no longer need to care about.
Yeah.
That's all. And I think that is a worrying trend.
Yep.
And if I may close with this, and I wrote something like this at the weekend, as a leader, your obligation is not to build just an efficient organization. It's to build an extraordinary one. And humans are how you build extraordinary organizations.
Amazing. And with those last few words, build an extraordinary organization with humans. Thank you, Hilton, for speaking to me about your own amazing journey, your love for marketing and culture. We covered some very interesting ground on the two topics that you love the most, I love the most, which are both marketing and culture. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Ash, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time. And as always, thank you for the work that you're doing. I appreciate you bringing these wonderful stories to life and sharing them. Thank you so much, mate. You are extraordinary.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.